As Bridget Hennessy once said, I'm back, I'm bad, and I'm nationwide. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and I have been away for a while. A fortnight. And whilst I recorded a half-hour video on Sunday explaining my absence, discussing a very short period of unfathomable sadness and why last Tuesday did not happen, I decided I don't want to dwell on the more upsetting episodes of my life. And therefore, I'm here today, not with a wrap-up, because, quite honestly, I can't be bothered making one. And not really with a haul, but with a haul. And maybe a wool gathering video. What is this? It's Charlie when he can't be arsed. So, because of the BookTube prize, there are a lot of books that I read in February that I can't discuss currently, but I can talk about 2 books, and I don't want to go too in depth into them. I'm not feeling that at the moment. So the 2 books are The Tradition by Jericho Brown and Patsy by Nicole Dennis-Benn. Let's start with this book. I am not a fan of The Tradition by Jericho Brown. I have already found someone who I am gifting this book to. I appreciate the themes in these poems, and I appreciate any writer's wish to write in whatever way they want to. But this book wasn't for me, and that's okay. And I can't properly pinpoint why I didn't care for the book. I know that I didn't like the capitalisation of the first word of every line. I found it a bit archaic. I did wonder whether that linked into this tradition that the poet was talking about. And like I say, it explores themes that I think have become commonplace in poetry, and unfortunately, the manner in which they were discussed in here just wasn't to my taste. But I know that this book is beloved, and I can appreciate anybody else's thoughts on the book and how much they enjoyed it. But yeah. My love of Patsy, meanwhile, has broadened and gained more depth the more I have been away from the book. This follows the character of Patsy and her daughter, whose name escapes me. True, that's her name. And Patsy, very early on in the book, has made the decision to move to America to be with the woman she loves. And yet when she arrives in New York, things aren't quite what they seem. Once I finished this book, I began to question why it was called Patsy, and whether anything actually happened. And then I realised something. This book isn't just about Patsy, nor is it about the... I remember making this idea that Patsy was also a double entendre, because Patsy wasn't just the main character's name, it's a name we associate with cowardice, I believe. I realised it was also about the immigrant experience in America and the experience of people who are undocumented, and how they live this almost ghost life with people acknowledging they exist but at the same time refusing to acknowledge their existence. This explores themes, and I just think that this book is brilliant, and it was great to see the identity struggle between Patsy and her daughter, and how True really needed her mother, but Patsy didn't feel like she could be a mother. And I really liked seeing how this book explored a different kind of mother-daughter relationship than I have seen done previously. I thought I heard something then. Either way, I think that should you want to read a book, should you have been considering Patsy at all, you ought to read it. I adored Here Comes the Sun, but I think that Patsy took some of the themes that were in that book and explored them in more depth than that book did. And yeah, just gonna say it now, one of my favourites of this year. And those are the books that I wanted to talk about that I have actually read. And I got some more books out of the library, so shall we talk about them as well? So, during the last 2 weeks, I did talk about how, in this video that you're never going to see, this sadness I had felt meant that I didn't really read much. And so, for this week and a half that I didn't really read, I don't know what I did. But I did get more books. And we'll go with the library books first. So I got Tuesday's Gone by Nicci French. This is the second book in the Frida Klein series, as popularised by Jen Campbell and Lauren of Lauren and the Books. I haven't started it yet, and whether I read it before it's due back at the library, I don't know. I don't have this want in me to compulsively read the books like Jen and Lauren did. I agree that the first book is a good beginning to the series, but yeah, sometimes you don't want to read an entire series all at once. Then I got Flames by Robbie Arnott, or Arnott. Arnott sounds weird. Either way, Simon of Savageries just mentions this author's new book, and I do not know that I've heard of this author before. I read the back, and basically this woman dies, and then a week after her death, she appears in the garden of her children. A children's garden? That's an easier way to say that. You wouldn't know that English is my first language, would you? And then she promptly bursts into flames. It seemed weird. It's been a long time since I read a properly weird book. And again, as with all library books, I will probably forget that I have this book out of the library, and because of that, I won't read it before it's due back. But that's what I always do with books. I get them and I renew them, and then eventually I read them if I want to, as I do with all of the books I have on my shelves. And then I got this ginormous tome, which is The Eighth Life by Nino Haratschvili. And I saw Eric Carl Anderson mention this book, and I had previously seen it at the library. On Thursday, which is the day the writers group meet, they announced the Man Booker International Prize long list. This is on there. And I'm going to tell you about a little bit of narcissism. Every Thursday when I visit the library, I always go to the H section to see whether anybody has taken my books out of the library. So I always see this book. And I didn't know out about it. But when I saw it was on the long list, being me and pretending to care, I thought I'd have a look. And there is this thing about a delicious chocolate recipe passed down through the generations. And that seemed to be a bit magical. It seemed to be a theme that linked back to Joanne Harris, who happens to be one of my favourite authors. And so I thought I'd get it. But it's a long one. It's nearly 940 pages. So I've read 10 of them. 940 pages, if we put it into perspective, is probably the size of 3 full-length novels nowadays. But let's take it even further than that and move that off my ear. I usually read about 2 pages a minute. I can't with this because of how big it is, but let's just say I read 2 pages a minute. And I can't do maths properly, for the life of me, but I'm going to say it's, what, 470 pages? That's half of that, so 470, it's nearly, what, 5 hours, maybe. And I'm not good with maths. I don't know whether you know this about me, but I did happen to fail mathematics. Well, I got a D. But to me, that's a fail. One moment. My sister came home. I went to make a cup of tea. Forgot where I was. Don't want to edit this video. Mention this book. Moving on. So, if you didn't know, I'm a writer. I mention it a lot nowadays. I never used to because I didn't want you to see or think that I was only, no. How do I say this? I didn't want you to think I was only in these parts trying to make a bit of cash. So, I never used to mention it. However, there's a thing called AuthorTube. Now, I wouldn't call myself an AuthorTuber because I don't tend to watch AuthorTube that much. I just find that it ends up... I can't be bothered saying why I don't watch it much, but I don't. Also, I've just realised in this moment that I don't like us calling ourselves booktubers or authortubers because the word tuber reminds me of potatoes. So, anyway. Last Tuesday, the day that did not happen, Tuesday did not happen, I became a bit glum about the fact that I haven't been writing much of the final Doris book, and knowing that I could have been writing it and I could have been getting it done straight out of the gate with finishing An Heir to Murder and, you know, editing it and getting it all done. So I thought, do you know what? I really need to write that book. Now, I didn't intend to write anything last week, but being Charlie and getting a bit glum, for whatever reason, it lit a fire under me on the Wednesday that I woke up and I dressed as though I was going to work, even though I was just sat at my computer all day. And I wrote 10,000 words, sat at my computer working for 13 hours. And so the second chapter of the final Doris book is now done. We are at 24,000 words. I think I'm about a quarter of the way there. No, that's a lie. I realised I'm a fifth of the way there. 25,000 is what I anticipated to be the quarter mark. But I am going through and just writing really long chapters. I figured out how I'm going to space it out now and make it more readable. And this is going to be a story told in 3 parts with a finale chapter that's going to wrap everything up for the entire series. It's going to be grand. You're going to love it if you're a fan of Doris. And if you're not, if you absolutely hate it, that is fine as well. And that's all I have to say on that matter. I'm writing the final Doris book. I have a bit of overtime this week, which means I won't be writing as much as I would like to be doing, but I will be taking advantage of the time I do have set aside to write. I'm also helping a friend with their book because they are one of the people that read An Heir to Murder and Doris Ahoy and really helped me work things out, so it's only right that I repay that favour. Next, I purchased a new book. Actually, I forgot I'd ordered it, and that is Sacrament of Bodies by Romeo Oriogun. And this is a poetry collection that cost me a fair amount of money, and I don't know much about it. But I'm looking forward to it. Then, to alleviate my upset at the amount of money I spent on that one poetry collection, I chose to buy some charity shop books. If you did not know already, I work at a charity shop. And So let's just look at some of the books. I was taking some of these books off the shelf because they've been on there for too long, and I really didn't want to see them put into a bag to go and be pulped. And so the first of those is How to Measure a Cow by Margaret Forster. This sees a woman who has tried to build a new identity for herself, I think, in the north of England. Oh, she should know not to try that in the north of England. There's no secrets here. You can't have a hidden past if you're in the north of England. It'll soon get found out. Go to London. Nobody cares about you in London. She's come from London. But she should have stuck in London. Just go to somewhere else. Where do I know in London? Nowhere. I've never been. But yeah, coming to the north is a big issue. You shouldn't do that. Her name's Tara, apparently. Does anybody know the weather woman called Sarah Blizzard? I've always wondered, is that her name, or is it just a qualification as to why she should be a meteorologist? Think about it. Sarah Blizzard. Basically, she's getting a letter. An old friend wants to meet up, and she's going to discover fighting the dangers of the past. Dangers of fighting the past. I don't know, it's in Palatino linotype. I like that font. Also, cow. Farmer's son. We farm sheep, but you understand. Then I got The Salt Path by Raynor Winn, because a copy of this book came into the shop a while back, and I wanted to read it, and I was going to buy it, but it was gone. So as soon as I saw this, I was like, I'm having it. I'm having it. £1, it's mine. And this is Raynor Winn, the writer, has learnt that her husband of 32 years is terminally ill, so they decide to walk the 630-mile southwest coast path from Somerset to Dorset. Non-fiction. Ooh, all the books are going to fall. All the books are going to fall. That's what happens when you put a rather large book on top of some smaller books and try to put smaller books on top of them, the pile falls. Let's go with a bit more non-fiction. Mary Beard's Women and Power, a manifesto. I know note about it. Jonathan Coe, The Rain Before It Falls, a hauntingly melancholy tale of love and loss, say the Daily Mail. When have we ever listened to anything the Daily Mail says? Who here actually likes the Daily Mail? Not me. Although a volunteer does bring in the crossword of theirs every week, and at least I'm not giving them the money. I got this book because it seemed to be about family, family death, inheritance, mothers and daughters, and you know I like a story about a family. If I hate it, I hate it. It only cost me £1. I don't know out about Jonathan Coe. Shall we see if there's a biography of him? There isn't, but apparently you're able to review his books with 1, 2, 3 words. Next, we got Monkey by Wu Ch-eng-en, and I got it because I watched The Legend of Monkey on Netflix, and so it seems like some sort of classic fantasy fiction and mythology, and that speaks to me on a spiritual level. Also, I just want to point out, whilst you might be seeing a mess of books behind me nowadays, this entire pile of books here is actually my TBR pile. Yeah, that's it. That's all I have on here now. Books that aren't worthy of my shelves yet. Then I got The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak, because even though I have not read 10 minutes, 38 seconds in This Strange World reading it off the shelf behind you, I really didn't want to throw this book away. Bitter Orange by Claire Fuller. People seemed to like this book last year, and if I was being smart, I would have read this bit which said, a latter-day Daphne du Maurier. Because I don't like Daphne du Maurier. Someone is dying. The vicar's there for a deathbed confession. Oh. let's not dislike it before we've read it. Let's not do that. And then I got The Familiars by Stacey Hawes. I've stopped getting popular fiction from actual bookshops. If a book is popular, then I wait for it to arrive at the charity shop. And Stacey Hawes was talking to Graham Norton about her new book, The Foundling, not this Saturday, but the Saturday before. And I mentioned how I was waiting for this book to come into the shop. And a day later it arrived, so I have borrowed it. And I thought it said Goresworth, which is just round the corner from me, but it doesn't. It says Gorethorpe. The new Hilary Mantel, say Cosmopolitan. Well, Jessie Burton liked it, and we like Jessie Burton, so I'm sure we can trust this one. And those are all the books that I have acquired as well. I'm also currently reading The Confession by Jessie Burton, as well as reading The Eighth Life. And I started Sleeping Beauties by Stephen and Owen King, but I read 4 pages, so that's not really enough to comment on when it's a 718 page book. Right. I haven't really got up to much over the last 2 weeks, if I'm being honest. Since I disappeared into the ether to be momentarily sad and dismal, it really is exhausting when you're feeling a bit down. And so when I made that half-hour video on Sunday, and I thought about going back and editing it just to tell you all that I hadn't had the best time with me fortnight away. I wasn't actually away, I was just away from YouTube. I've decided you don't need to see that. You can just see me ramble about some books I've acquired and hear some half-hearted thoughts about some books what I've read, and hear about the fact that the final Doris book is happening. Also, I'm trying to book some events for myself. So if you know of any bookish events that are happening, if you want your local library to order books from me, then please do contact me with the library's details, or contact the library yourself. If you would like to see a bookshop acquire some of my books, you could do me a favour and go into your local bookshops and try and get them to stock my books as well. Let's really turn this into a community thing. I've realised that as a writer, you require support, and the support is there if you just acknowledge it and ask. As Amanda Palmer, that's her name, she did The Art of Asking. We read it last year and we're finally getting around to it. This might also be coming from listening to Michelle Visage's The Diva Rules at the weekend and realising that I do not do enough to further my career as a writer. So we need to step up with that and work harder. And by we, I mean me. But if you want to be like my ground squad, trying to help me get the books out there, my street team, then feel free. Tell all your friends about me books. Also, thank you to the people who have added An Heir to Murder to your March Mystery Madness TBRs. Thank you to the people that have recently discovered Our Doris. I've noticed that a lot of people have been borrowing the book from Kindle Unlimited recently, and that warms my chilly little heart. That final bit, chilly little heart, is a quote from Bianca Del Rio, whose book I'm about to listen to as well. I've discovered that I really appreciate non-fiction on audio, especially when it's being read by the writer. There's just something about it that it feels more like a podcast or a show than an actual physical book. And whilst I do add it to this journal of books I've read, it never feels like a chore like some of these books. like I said, I am like the flu. I will keep on coming back. I hope that you got something out of this video besides sheer boredom. Maybe you even enjoyed it. And until next time, that is all.